Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
And I'm Scott Warr. And today is a part 2 of a book review episode that we started a few weeks ago. The book is called Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Dr. Peter Attia. If you haven't gotten the book, you got to get the book, whether you read it. In fact, I've read it twice. And when I say read, I'm doing air quotes. I actually listened to the book on Audible twice. It's one of those books that you need to have the hard copy, even if you listen to it, because it's a reference book that you need to go back again and again. I was actually surprised going back the second time in preparation for the podcast that there's so much that I missed listening to it the first time around. So it's probably a good idea for you to buy it twice. And Dr. Peter Attia probably would be happy about that. And this is part 2. We'll link the part 1 in the show notes so you could go listen to that. But today we're going to cover 3 more chapters, chapter 9, 10, and 16. And to help us with that is Adam Kimble. He was on the first part. Unfortunately, Andy Jones Wilkins wasn't able to join us for the part 2. So we're going to be missing him, but that means there's a lot of pressure on Adam because he has to take up Andy's time. If you don't know who Adam is, he's lives up in Truckee, California, lives up in the mountains. How much snow do you have right now outside your front door there, Adam?
Well, our most recent storm, which was by far the biggest one of the season, produced about 5 feet at lake level. So,
jeez, that's just crazy. Anyway, he loves it up there. He's in the mountains. He can go mountain running all the time. He's run around the lake a few times, Lake Tahoe a few times. In fact, he has the FKT for running around the lake. He has a couple FKTs, other FKTs, including running the length of Great Britain with one of his running pals, Chris King. He is a coach at Run on Dirt Coaching. And of course, we'll link all of his social media channels there as well. One of the things that I love about Adam is he was also the winner of The Wheel, which was a Discovery Channel survival type program. If you love those type of things, go on to Google or whatever and find that and watch it, because Adam was the winner of that. A co-winner or winner?
Co-winner.
There were 2 winners.
Yep.
And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am wrong, but I'm just going to put this out here to just kind of set the theme for the day of me being wrong. Were you on The Price is Right?
I was, and I also I was the winner of the showcase on The Price is Right as well. Yeah.
Is there anything you haven't done, Adam? Anything you haven't done?
Well, for anyone that isn't familiar with The Wheel, it's hilarious that the 2 shows that I've been on, I won both of them. One of them I starved in the wilderness for 2 months. The other one, I went up on a stage and spun a wheel and waved at the crowd. So one of them was a slight bit easier than the other.
Kind of an ironic coincidence. Both included a wheel there, Adam. Did you ever put that together?
Oh, actually, that's hilarious. I didn't. I love that. Wow. Who knew that when I was spinning the Price is Right wheel, I was setting myself up for a much harder wheel down the road.
Hey, remind me. I mean, you can find the video of that. If I do, I'll link it in the show notes. But there is a video of you on The Price is Right. Was that? I can't remember. Was that with Bob Barker, or was it with?
I will send you a link. I can't remember if the video is available on YouTube, but I definitely have a clip of me on The Price is Right that I could send to you. So.
Yeah, send it to me. Was that with Bob Barker or with Drew Carey? I can't remember if you were with the Bob Barker era.
A great question, because it was literally the first season of Drew. Bob had just retired. It was 2008, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, enough about The Price is Right. Let's get into this book, Outlive, which, it's been a few weeks since you've listened to the part 1 of that. Basically, it's a book about kind of juxtaposing longevity with I just lost the word.
Sounds like bigger than a bread box.
It's living long and
longevity and
lifespan and health span.
Let me start that over. And if it's been a few weeks since you've read the book or listened to the part one, it's basically a book that kind of juxtaposes lifespan with health span. And ideally, we want to live our life from the start to the end in the healthiest way we can. And Peter Attia gets into some strategies and some tactics on how that can come to play. We talked about 4 of the chapters in part 1, and today we're going to talk about 3 of the chapters. Chapter 9, which is one that Adam is going to review for us here, is called Chasing Memory, Understanding Alzheimer's Disease and Other neurodegenerative diseases. Adam, why did you pick that chapter?
And before you get into that, Adam, and I don't mean to interrupt, but so our reviews are, Adam's gone through, he's read the chapter, and he's bringing us highlights or tidbits or things inside of that chapter, and there are more than what he's going to bring to us because we don't have that much time, things that stuck out to him, things might affect us as runners. And so I'm interested to hearing what you found in chapter 9.
Yeah, so great question there. Really what I decided to do was I was like, I'm just going to look at another chapter that I think, while the subject matter is different, kind of complements what I focused on the first time. So I was looking at exercise in our first episode on this book, and obviously neurodegenerative disease is much different than that, but there's some sort of underlying themes that remain the same that I thought were really interesting. So I think we talked about this last time, but one of the things that Peter Attia mentions in the book several times is he talks about what he calls the 4 horsemen of chronic disease, which is basically the 4 biggest killers and the things that we need to look out for in our journey of health. And those things are cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, and foundational disease, which is diabetes, is kind of the main part of that. So in looking at that, neurodegenerative disease, that is hard to say, Scott.
Thanks Adam, for making me look normal.
That, if you aren't familiar with what that is, it's Alzheimer's disease, dementia, those sorts of things. And yeah, so I took some notes about interesting points that I thought he made during the course of this chapter. So I'll start with that, and then you guys obviously chime in with your thoughts. So what he said generally, sort of at the start of the chapter, is our strategy in attacking this neurodegenerative disease should be looking at a few different things. So one of the things he says is what's good for the heart is good for the brain, and crucial to brain health. So that is your vascular health is also good for your brain. So focusing on keeping yourself fit is going to help your brain health. What's good for the liver and pancreas is also good for the brain. So metabolic health, also very important. And we talked about that in the first episode. Time is key. That's another thing. One of the things I really appreciate about Dr. Attia is I feel like he's very consistent he'll bring up a point and then he brings it up at various intervals throughout the rest of the book in different capacities. So he basically has said when it comes to any of these diseases, the number one thing that we can do is detect them early. So early detection and getting ahead of it before it becomes a big problem is the most important thing that we can do. And then the most powerful tool that we have in preventing cognitive decline is, you guys guessed it, exercise. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to take this chapter, because he dives into the fact that even brain health, neurodegenerative disease, is most influenced by exercise, which is just wild. So he talks about a whole range of different things, but ultimately he says, if you look at a large portion of people that have a long lifespan and a long health span, they almost across the board have an exercise routine that's built into their lifestyle, which I thought was really fascinating.
So Adam, I'll make a comment as you're revving up for that next piece. And what flashed into my mind as you're talking about how important it is for exercise for all of our body's systems, including the brain and cognitive process, is clean water. Where a stream that's running rapidly is probably going to be a stream that you want to dip your cup into and take a drink, but one that's stagnant, that isn't moving, has an opportunity for a lot of a lot of, for the lack of words, yuckiness, things that you don't want to drink or taste is just not safe to drink. You got to find that clean, fresh, moving stream. And we need to be like that stream. When we move, we stay clean. We flush our body. There are benefits from it for every system that you mentioned earlier. So I had that image of fast moving water, that we need to be water.
Don, that is an excellent metaphor so early in the podcast. Wow.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. I got another one. I just don't know when it's going to come out.
Well, now it's like, where do we go from here? Should I keep going, or is that the end?
No.
Well, the one thing that I'll just tap in there and say, and maybe you're gonna say this too, Adam, is the theme throughout the book. You kind of see the evolution, and Peter talks about this, where when he first started in medicine, he thought the most important thing would be nutrition. And nutrition was paramount to good health. But he's changed his mind, and he says exercise, movement is the most important thing. And that's why we're talking about it on Trail Runner Nation, is because we want to move. We need to get out there and move. And the things that we're doing out there on the trail or on the roads or wherever you're running is good for your heart. It's good for your health. It's good for your mental. It's just a good thing to do all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's really cool. I may have mentioned this the first time around, but I love his integration of all of because this book is very science based. There's a lot of technical stuff that he talks about, some stuff that went over my head as I was reading it. But he also ties it back to very, very simple concepts. And I think that's what makes this such a great read, is that one, it challenges you to think about your future and how you need to set yourself up for that. And then two, kind of gives you this roadmap of things that you can consider to sort of start that journey, even if you feel like you don't know enough about it, right? Okay, so then he kind of goes a little bit into Alzheimer's disease. This isn't super pertinent, but I just thought it was interesting. He talks about how it's the one of the most, or maybe the most difficult of the horseman diseases, because it's not as straightforward as the others. And then he gives an example. He says, female Alzheimer's patients outnumber men 2-to-1, but the reverse is true for dementia and Parkinson's, which have twice as much prevalence in men as they do in women. So just something I thought was really interesting. Kind of shows you it is impacting everybody, in different ways. Then he kind of talks about some of the risk factors associated with all those things, but then gets into sort of how you can approach the prevention and treatment of everything, which I thought was a really interesting part. So I won't dig into this because I'll let, spoiler alert, I'll let Don take this further down the line. But he says that sleep is a very powerful tool against Alzheimer's disease. We all need to get our sleep. It's also, as a running coach, it's, I talk to my athletes about this a lot, but sleep is one of the biggest tools in the toolbox. And a lot of people don't consider that. It's like you could have, all your recovery boots, you can have all these devices that help you with stuff, and that stuff is great. But if you're not getting enough sleep, that stuff is not pointless, but has a lot less effectiveness, right? So again, not only is it good for recovery, but it's good in preventing the 4 horseman diseases as well. Another interesting thing is that brushing and flossing one's teeth and gum health in particular can actually help prevent neurodegenerative disease, which I thought was really fascinating.
Dang, I missed. That's why I need the hard copy. I need to go through and I missed that completely.
Yeah. So,
Scott, you have been missing it. I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
A little halitosis going on. Is that what you're talking about, Don? Is that why you let me lead?
And then another thing that's helpful as well is, and I love to hear this. It's always nice when you get a little like affirmation for something that you're already doing. But especially we talked about, I'm running Badwater this year, so I've been doing a lot of heat training. Dr. Attia says that the sauna is a very helpful tool. There's a little bit of like discussion on the interpretation of it, but he said that typically, if you're looking for the best results, 4 sessions per week of at least 20 minutes per session at around 180 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of the sweet spot to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by 65%.
Ooh.
So if you're regularly using the sauna, you're probably doing yourself some favors. And there's also other health benefits as well, but in reference to this, big deal there.
I wonder if there's some parallel benefits to the cold plunge. You know, if you go one direction with the heat, is there similar findings? I'm not asking you to answer this, just food for thought. If getting in that sauna at 180 degrees is beneficial, what about combining that or just exclusively doing cold plunge if you don't have access to that?
I recall we talked to Alex Hutchinson about the cold plunge thing, and he came back and he said, hey, if it feels good, do it. But right now, the research doesn't go one way or the other. It doesn't say there's a benefit or there's a harm of cold plunging. So he said, hey, if you think it's benefiting you, do it.
Yeah.
If it's not, but there's no research or studies that have been done yet that prove one way or the other on cold plunging.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm actually I cold plunge quite a bit. I like to do, to Don's point, I like to do the hot cold therapy in succession actually. And it's funny, people, you know, sometimes I'll post videos of the cold plunges, especially in the winter in Tahoe. You know, people think I'm crazy for doing that. But one of the things I tell everybody is exactly what you said, Scott. People say, you know, is there like all, you know, is there all these benefits? And I'm like, well, if you're looking at the science, it's kind of murky, you know, but I will say it's been shown to for sure increase serotonin levels, which is a good thing. Increase energy levels for a lot of people. That's anecdotal, but I've noticed that for myself. And then the other thing that I do, the other reason I do it is, you know, I go into the heat and then, my blood vessels are dilating and then I get into the water and they're constricting. And to Don's point earlier about the stream, we want to be doing the same thing with our blood, right? Blood heals us, heals tissue. And so if you can get your blood flowing better in different areas of the body, that's always going to help.
I think I remember seeing an Instagram post of you doing a swan dive in your swimming suit into a big pile of snow. Was that you?
Yeah, I've done that as well. Yeah. That's a slightly modified cold plunge.
Yeah. I guess if you got it out your backyard, you might as well use it, right?
Exactly.
So Coach Adam, let me ask you, in the scheme of things, you're training and you're you know, putting some miles in. When do you recommend a person doing the hot cold plunge? Before a workout, after a workout, at the end of the day, you know, before the sleep, before your workout? I mean, where do you put this in?
Yeah, but actually both cold plunges and sauna or getting in heat, you can do, like, I think it's going to be beneficial either way, but most of the studies suggest both of those should be done post run or after an activity. So if you're like heat training, for example, for a race, the studies will show that it's better to get your run in and then hop in the sauna afterwards. But sometimes I'll do the opposite just because then I'm soaking wet and it's like, all right, now I gotta, you know, get into this run. And I think it's a good mental piece of training for me. But and same thing, I think the disadvantage to doing a cold plunge or something like that is you could potentially kind of tighten up the muscles and constrict them, and then you wouldn't necessarily want to go right into something, you know, a physical activity right after that. It wouldn't be a huge detriment, but probably not the most ideal conditions to do it that way. So
yeah, good point.
Yeah. Okay. So then he gets into the exercise portion of it, which was the part that was especially interesting to me. And again, he says the single most powerful preventive tool in our kit is exercise, which has a two-pronged impact on Alzheimer's disease. It helps maintain glucose homeostasis, and it also improves the health of our vasculature. So again, it's controlling the you know, one of the other horseman diseases, diabetes, and helping our nutrition along the way as well, which is an important thing. And then he kind of gets into some more interesting things as it relates to Alzheimer's disease and the other neurodegenerative diseases and exercise. And he talks about, I thought this was a really cool thing. He talks about a concept known as movement reserve that becomes relevant with Parkinson's disease, excuse me. So people with better movement patterns and a longer history of moving their bodies, such as runners, athletes, gymnasts, anybody that had something that they did for a significant portion of their life, those people tend to resist or slow the progression of neurodegenerative diseases as compared to sedentary people. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. You bring up movement patterns, and the people that have better movement patterns seem to be able to postpone or push off those diseases. And I think to myself, well, why? And then it occurred to me, if you have good form, you can do it longer. If you have poor form, you start to land on your joint wrong, or use muscles wrong, or just have biomechanical consequences of not having good form. But the better you swim, the better you run, the better you can do these things, the more efficient you are, and the longer you can do it. And the longer you can do it, that means you move longer. And then, to his point, things are better.
Yeah. And, to that point, Don, when I was reading this chapter in particular, one of the things it made me think about was, and I already sort of tried to do this a little bit in my training, but it just made me want to incorporate more types of cross training and things that stimulate me differently. Whether it's like dance or, different gym work that's maybe different than what you normally do. It's like, going to the gym is great. And, maybe you go there and you do the same thing every time. That's better than not going. But what's better than doing the same thing every time is doing something different every time, And that was one of the takeaways I had was, if these movement patterns are so important, I think stretching ourselves to do things a little bit differently could be the key to, increasing our longevity in that way.
Yeah, and that's part of some ergonomic training. What, as far as sitting at your desk ergonomic. What's the next? What's the best position? The answer is your next position. You need to be moving and changing and not being in one static position the whole time. The best position is your next position.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and then again, this just shows the vital importance of exercise in all of our lives. But he goes on to say that exercise is literally the only intervention that has been shown to delay the progression of Parkinson's disease, which, again, powerful. Just thinking about the scope of this and how impactful it can be on our lives is really powerful. Then the last few things I wanted to mention was Dr. Attia goes into talking about, so I thought this was interesting because I feel like this is sort of a conversation that probably a lot of people have had before, but it's in talking about if maybe you've had someone in your life or just heard about someone in, a friend's life who has had a family member or someone that's been that's had a neurodegenerative disease and has been, struggling with that. He references the conversation of like doing mental things to stimulate your mind so that it doesn't get to that point. And the example he uses is crossword puzzles, except what he says is simply doing a crossword puzzle every day seems to only make people better at doing crossword puzzles. So what he was suggesting was same way with the movement, is trying to do more complex things with your mind. Sometimes that's interacting with other people. I think Don made this point, I think, in our first conversation about the importance of emotional health in all of this, and having a tribe and a group of people in your life that can support you in various ways. I think that's immeasurable, the value that has in our lives. And so maybe it's conversing, having an intelligent conversation, or maybe if it's us, a less intelligent conversation. I'm just kidding. But like just stretching yourself in that way. And I think it was just an interesting thing to think about, complex movements, both mentally and physically, benefiting us in the long run.
What comes to my mind there, Adam, as you said that, we talk about keep the body moving, always be doing something, because that ultimately is going to allow for longevity and a high quality of living. And so I think, why wouldn't it be any different for the brain, right? So we need to keep relearning, or not relearning, or just learning, in some cases relearning, or exploring new things, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, maybe reading, maybe meditation, just get the brain moving and active, telling stories, calling friends, hashing out old times and talking about those. The brain should be moving just like the body moves to stay young, youthful, and keep the synapses firing, to open up some files that have been closed for a while. Keep that brain active like you're asking your body to stay active. They're not separated, but they are connected. I'm not sure if that last sentence made followed along, but I think we need to be active with our brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does. I mean, I this is purely anecdotal from my perspective, but we talked about it on the last episode, and I've just seen it a lot with the people in my life that have had really great lifespan and health span. It seems like there's always a community piece there, whether it's a small group of friends, whether it's your mom having an exercise class, Don,
Yeah.
It's like those kind of things, I think, can't be underestimated in increasing somebody's life and health span.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt again, Scott. I hate to keep doing that, but if we think about the people that have lived with full lifespan and health span combination, I think as I go through that list of folks, they're all interested in something. They've got some passion. They're still pushing in a new direction or doing something exciting that allows them to do it. When they turn off, their body seems to turn off. Their body shuts down, their mind shuts down, and you need a reason to live. You need to keep moving.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I just had two more quick points to make, and then I was gonna move on to your chapters. So the last few things I wanted to mention were, and we talked about this with the more complex movements, strength training, also very important. And a study looking at 500,000 patients in the UK found that grip strength, which is an excellent proxy for overall strength, was very strongly associated with decreased incidence of dementia. So people with greater grip strength were less likely to have dementia, which again, some of these things are just really interesting to think about how the physical impacts the mental, but that's our sport, isn't it?
Yeah, but grip strength, it means they're using their hands and they're doing things that require grip. Maybe they're correlated perfectly and they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
I was going to say, come on.
Do you guys remember those little hand gripper exercise machines, little springs?
Yeah.
I wonder, I need to get one of those. It's been a long time, and just when I'm doing work, you're sitting by the computer, just do a little exercise into the grip strength there.
Well, you guys know I used to be a baseball player. I was a catcher, and I forget who taught me this, but there was a drill, I guess you call it a drill, that we used to do where you would fill up a small bucket with rice, and the goal was to get your hand in and twist until you got to the bottom of the bucket. It was supposed to help with grip strength. Which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, really?
But yeah, we did. I used to do that. I'd go home and fill up the bucket.
I guess you need grip strength to hold
Adam,
runners
wash
on the
your
base.
hands, says your mom.
and then when we were done, we poured a bunch of water in and had rice for dinner.
There you go.
And then the last thing I was going to mention, guys, is he talks a little bit about dietary stuff as it relates to these diseases, and metabolism plays a role in this. Not as big of a role as exercise and some of the other things, but he talked about a patient of his who he did some testing on her, and she had a family history of this and was much more prone to this happening later in her life. And again, I think this is really cool. She kind of had this, like, when he started telling her everything, she sort of had this, like, my life is over mentality. And he told her, listen, this is something that's going to potentially affect you like 30 years down the road, but we're talking about it 30 years ahead of time, so we can actually do everything we need to do to put you in the right place. And again, that's one of the things I love about how this book is structured, is it's all, what can I do in the short term to help myself in the long term? And I love that.
Yeah. Very, very good. Very good.
Well done, Adam. Way to pull out some fantastic golden nuggets, as Scott calls them, out of chapter 9.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
And as I'm kind of summarizing your comments, the moving part is important, and keeping the brain active. And I think that as trail runners, we do a lot of trail running solo, But I think it's important that we do get together with our buddies and our running groups or whatever and go out, because I think that not only supports the community and strengthens the tribe as a whole, but it also keeps your brain active. You may be learning something from the person you're running with that day. Something about biochemistry or something about the law. Don and I used to run with our friend who was a lawyer, and he would go through cases with us as we were going down the trail or up a hill, and we'd be learning bits and pieces of the law. So you're actually exercising not only your body running, but also your brain, and I think that's really important.
All right, Scott, you're up next.
Excellent.
What have you got, Mr. War?
Yeah, so chapter 10 is thinking tactically, building a framework of principles that work for you. And so this is there may be a little bit redundancy here, but I'm going to start with the way that Dr. Peter Attia started, and he quoted the great Bruce Lee, and he said, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and then add what is specifically your own." In fact, that should be a tagline for Trail Runner Nation. Sometimes we get complaints that, hey, you're biased, and we're never biased. Don and I don't know anything. We don't have an opinion really about anything.
Yeah, we don't
All we
know
do is
enough.
we bring people on to talk about, I don't know, keto, and then we bring people on to talk about carb loading. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and then add what is specifically your own. And so he talks about tactics. And one of the things in overall lifespan, health span, is our bodies and our environmental circumstances have evolved. We no longer are hunter gatherers. We don't have to store a lot of our food and energy in our fat. We don't have to walk for hours to get our food or our shelter. And because of this, we need to be tactical about how we approach our health and longevity, because our bodies are designed, when we bring food in, if there's excess, store it, right? And so we have to say, okay, what is the strategy here, and what are some tactics that we need to know, and what can we do? So he outlines 5 tactics, and we've talked about some of these, and they are in order of importance. Number 1, exercise. He says it's the most potent. Aerobic efficiency, and he talks about the different types of exercise. Our aerobic efficiency, our max aerobic output, which is commonly VO2 max, our strength, and our stability. And we often talk about aerobic efficiency, VO2 max, and strength. Sometimes we runners don't like to talk about strength, but that's important. But I never thought about stability and doing specific exercises that can make you more stable and make you more balanced when you're running. And frankly, I think trail running does that inherently, because you're jumping over logs and jumping through lakes and stuff like that. So I think that's important. Okay, number 2. So first one is exercise. Number 2 is nutritional biochemistry, which I said earlier. That's kind of where Peter Attia flipped. He thought nutrition was more important initially, and he said, you know what? Exercise is more important. Then let's look at nutrition. Then we're going to get into number 3. We're not going to talk a lot about that because Don is, and that's sleep. It's one that's often overlooked. And sometimes, I think of stories you hear about, Benjamin Franklin or Elon Musk only sleeping 3 hours a night because they have so much to do and they're more efficient. You know what? Maybe you should take that with a grain of salt, right?
I definitely take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. You need to find out what's right for you. Back to Bruce Lee. What absorb what's useful, discard what's not, and then work on the experiment of one and see what specifically for you works the best. So exercise, nutrition, sleep. Number 4 is manage and improve your emotional health. I think that's really important. And the 5th one, which is one that we often get ourselves in trouble, and we make that number 1 a lot of times, and that is any drugs or supplements or hormones that are recommended by a doctor. or sometimes not recommended. Maybe we get up every morning and we take some kind of a supplement, and that's the reason that's going to help us become healthier and live longer. But that's really the fifth. It is important, but it's the fifth. The first one's exercise.
First one's exercise. Was that a great comment,
Yeah.
Scott? Sorry.
Thanks for the review, Don.
I was just trying to anticipate. I didn't know my mic was on. I'm sorry.
Are you emphasizing? Yes, number one is exercise.
Don is doing the review within the review.
Yeah.
I was doing a secondary podcast. I was somewhere else. I'm sorry. I was commenting in real time to a TRN podcast.
So, he talks about how the details are very important. And he gives a great example about car fatalities. And he said, okay, when you think about car fatalities, where do car fatalities happen? And he says, when you look at the data, it's actually maybe brings to light some things that you may not intuitively think. You think a lot of deaths happen on freeways, high speeds, lots of cars, lots of merging and unmerging, and you think that's where it is. But in fact, it's not on highways. It's at in the city at intersections. And there's obvious tactics that we can take that can help us so that we don't die in a collision in an intersection. Wear a seatbelt, don't drink and drive, don't text and drive. Those are some basic stuff, right? So those are some of the tactics. But he said, when you realize what actually is the cause of fatalities, and he outlines that. He says, it's typically at an intersection where a car gets T-boned on the driver's side of the car. Okay. And it's usually the person not at fault that dies. And it's usually the person that is in the right of way that dies. So once you know that, it gives you agency and it gives you a plan that you can utilize to hopefully avoid such tragedies, right? So when you get to an intersection, whether you have the right of way of not or not, where are you going to die? Where's the greatest chance that you're going to get an accident? It's that car coming from the left. So what choice do you have? Don't go flying through the intersection without looking to the left. Look to the left, look to the right, look to the left. He mentions one of his pals who's a long haul trucker. He's probably not going to die in a T-bone collision at an intersection, but he still looks every time he enters an intersection, looks to the left because he knows that's where the greatest chance of death is coming. So when we're looking at our overall health, let's look at what are our greatest weaknesses, and then let's create specific, tangible, detailed tactics that can help us avoid those. And so that's kind of the overview of chapter 10 is, okay, let's really look at this. And that's what he's done through the whole book. It says, okay, here are the four horsemen. Here are the reasons that are going to compromise your health span in the final decade of your life. Okay. We know what they are. They're these four things, these four horsemen. What can we do tactically that can help prevent those things from happening? And again, back to his tactics: exercise, nutritional biochemistry, sleep, manage and improve your emotional health. I think that part comes with going out on the trail, being in nature, being in the sun, being in contact with the earth and in nature, being with friends and part of your tribe. And then number 5, respecting and listening to your doctor about any kind of drugs or supplements or hormones that they recommend. And if we can do that, maybe we won't die in a car crash.
Yeah, and to that point, Scott, I think for me, one of the most valuable things about reading this book was recognizing that with all of the four horsemen, there's things that we know and things that we don't know. And so the best thing that you can do is take the information that you do have and that you do know and get ahead of it. And to your point about the trucker, looking to the left, it's like we can all be doing little things that can point us in the right direction. I think there was a different chapter where he was talking about cancer, and he was saying like colon cancer has become a big killer, and part of the problem is that it often gets detected too late. And so the recommendation used to be, I think it was 50, and they pushed it back to 45 because they were noticing it was impacting more people. And he said that for his patients, when they turn 40, he has them tested. So again, it's like taking this information and then putting it into practice as quickly as you can in order to, set yourself up for preventing a disaster later on.
And I will say, one of the things that he makes clear at the end of this chapter is those 5 tactics that I just talked about and that Don reinforced what number 1 was. They are all interrelated too, as well. So it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exercise and nutrition kind of play hand in hand. And that's the one thing I found when I'm out there really training. I find that I eat cleaner. When I'm not training as hard, I seem to, partake of those things that I probably should not in either quantity or quality.
Yeah,
and
that's also goes back to what we have talked about before, and that's the integration of mental, physical, and emotional health too. It's
right.
There's a homeostasis between all these things, and if you're putting all of your efforts into one thing and neglecting others, you're probably going to create a problem.
I have a question for you two. One of the things that maybe I forgot, or maybe I didn't pay attention to the book, but he didn't really get into a whole lot of the mental and emotional health. And I want to ask you two, how do you guys manage or improve your emotional health, mental and emotional health? What things do you do that in your lives that help improve or manage that?
Can I pick the lowest hanging fruit that's just, can I pick this piece of fruit up that's on the ground that fell from the tree just now? I mean, exercise and running, going out on the trail. I mean, doesn't that always unload quite a bit of that stress? How many
That's
steps?
How it's interrelated, right?
How many steps down the trail do you get before you forget about some of those things you left in the car?
Yeah, that's a great point. Similar for me as well. I think, you can sort out a lot of life's problems on a long run, I think. But yeah, for me, another thing, it's different for everybody, but prayer, meditation, those things are very helpful for my mental and emotional health as well. I think just, I don't know. I think sometimes maybe without even recognizing it, there's things that we have emotional and physical reactions to that we don't always fully address. And, there's different ways to go about doing that. But I think the more we can look at those things and dig into those things, the better off we're going to be. Typically pushing things aside or not sort of acknowledging maybe what you've felt or experienced, in my experience, isn't the best way to go about that. So for my mental and emotional health, I do my best to try to intentionally work through any things that I've felt through the different experiences that I've had.
I'm brought to a memory. My one of my very good friends, his dad just passed away. And one of the things his dad did every single morning, 7 days a week, was he went to a local coffee shop and had coffee with his buddies. The same group of buddies for probably 40 years. Every morning, and I don't know if he walked there, got some exercise, got some movement. It got him out of bed anyway, because he had to be at the coffee shop at a certain time. And they would sit around and they would chat. And they talk about life, and I'm sure they solved life's problems. And if one of the buddies had, hey, my lawnmower broke, then, two of them would say, hey, let's go over and help Bob fix his lawnmower this afternoon, or let's go help him move that couch that he needs moved or take to the dump or whatever. And it was that network of friends that I think helped his mental health and manage that mental health. And I think that we have that hopefully with our trail tribe where we can go up, it always astounds me where Don and I typically run, is near the end of the Western States course. And you can go up to that parking lot any day of the week and get out of your car. And typically there's someone else there that if you invited them, they would probably join you on a run. And I think that that's important, that network of friends or network of community can really help with that mental side.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's worthy of a mention. I just recently I was listening to something and I heard something about this, and it resonated with me because it's something that I try to do, and I'm not always in the headspace to do it, But what it was talking about was that there's a lot of people in life that don't feel seen. Like people go about their life and just feel like they're invisible. People aren't acknowledging them, that sort of thing. And so it was making me reflect on doing everything I can to see the people in my life, whether it's somebody I walk past at a trailhead, Scott, or someone I see on a daily basis. I think to the point about like the mental and emotional health, if we recognize each other as human beings and even just wave or say hi to somebody, how easy is that to do? It doesn't have to, you don't have to talk to somebody for an hour. It can be something really simple, but I think those kind of things go a really, really long way in making someone feel appreciated.
Or one of Don's pet peeves, and because I've been running with him for so long, it's become one of mine. Say hi to somebody that you pass on the trail. Acknowledge when you pass them on the trail. Say, hey, beautiful morning, eh? You don't have to stop. You don't even have to slow down. I think that see rather than be seen, I think is so important. And that's a great tangent.
Hey, off meeting little consult here with you, Adam, and only the people that watch the actual YouTube clip will get to see this, because I'm sure Ryan will edit this out. Do you think for a second, Adam, that this is Scott's pet peeve that he gave and handed to me? Or do you think it's actually my pet peeve? What do you think the answer is?
Are you projecting, Scott? Is that what's happening?
He's transferring
I need to work on the dementia thing, I think, a little bit, because oftentimes when I think it's my memory, it's actually Don's. And if it's his idea, I steal it. Who knows? Who knows?
Oh, that's great.
Well, very good.
So Don has chapter 16, which is The Awakening, How to Learn to Love Sleep, the Best Medicine for Your Brain.
And that's chapter 16. I probably surprised you, Scott, that I actually wrote that down on paper. And you're such a kind friend that you read that chapter heading and title because you figure I didn't have it. But the one time I did come prepared, and I actually read it. And I'm really surprised that nobody picked this until the very last chapter. And I anticipate, just as Peter Attia started with nutrition as the most important thing and then pushed it to the side.
No, you were the one who clarified. It's not nutrition's number one. No. Exercise number one.
What? I'm not done. Hold on, Mr. War. He started.
Sorry.
Run it back, Ryan. Run it back. He started with nutrition, and then he pushed it to the side, and up popped up exercise. And I'm projecting this will happen. He's going to move exercise, and what's going to pop up? Chapter 16, sleep. That's right.
Sleep's going to be the number one tactic, huh?
Hey, yeah. Hey, so you guys have mentioned a number of times the horsemen. Is that right? The horsemen.
And the four horsemen.
The four horsemen. And I'm asking myself, well, what are those four horsemen? I'm going to take a guess and be vulnerable here for a second. Help fill in the blanks. I'm going to think one of them is cancer. That's probably one of the horsemen. It is? Okay.
Yeah. If you listen to the podcast, Don,
yeah,
Adam mentioned the four horsemen at the very beginning
of this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see if I get them right then. Everybody else knows them. I'm the only guy in the room that doesn't know, and probably we're including listeners. And then I'm going to think that cardiovascular would probably be the next one. Is that true?
That's one of them.
Okay, good. And then I'm going to say neurogenic disease, because you did, I think that came in there. Is that one?
Yep.
Okay.
That's 3.
And then I'm going to say diabetes.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
All right.
Metabolic deficiency.
So I'm not brilliant. I just
Inefficiency.
I just listened a little bit in the beginning. I must have had my sleep. So let's go into chapter 16, sleep. And I'm going to lead with a question, which some of you at home might be thinking. So once again, Don didn't read the chapter and he's making stuff up, and he's leading with a question, which tells us nothing about the book. So I'm going to open this up, and Ryan, get your mic open up too, because you need to answer these questions too, our young producer, full of life and wisdom. And you've listened to our podcast for a long time, and you combine youth and wisdom now. How long do you guys sleep, Scott? And then Adam, and then Ryan? How long do you sleep?
I actually track my sleep with my Apple Watch. And I think the last time I looked at my statistics, it was 7.5 hours.
7.5. Nice. Very good.
Yep.
And Adam?
Yeah, my goal is always 8, and I usually fall between 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm. And Ryan?
Yeah, like 8, sometimes 9.
Well, so my next question.
He's growing.
Yeah, he's got. Yeah, but sometimes his 9 ends at 10 in the morning. So. But that's okay, because in our tribe, what we need people to watch the fire at night, keep the coyotes from coming in. Ryan, that's on you. Scott, you're an early riser. You guys pass the torch in crossing the night. You keep it ready for us the rest of the time. Adam, you and I get up and get the work done at a crisp 7 a.m. So, what's your magic number? What have you found works best for you, and maybe that's why you sleep what you do. And we'll go the same order. Scott?
It is that 7 to 8 hours.
Okay.
Absolutely. If I wake up on my own without an alarm, it's like right at 7.5 to 8 hours, almost consistently.
Adam?
Yeah, I probably get a little less than what would be ideal for me. Like, I think on the times that I can get closer to 9, I usually feel even better.
Yeah. And Ryan?
You have young kids though.
I do.
And that's tough with young kids.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan?
Yeah, I think I get enough sleep. I could use a little bit more, probably.
Right on. So, Adam, this is for you, Coach. All right, now I'm.
What about you, Don?
Oh,
you gotta answer your own questions.
No. I'm trying to get a consensus from you to make up a decision for me. So, Adam. So now I'm ramping my miles up. I'm used to my 8 hours is my magic number. That's what it's worked, but I'm going to increase my mileage by my workload by 50%. To get up to this big race. What should my sleep look like? Same, more, less, because I need to do more? Where do you steer me?
Yeah, I would probably try to...
Good question.
That is a good question. I would be trying to get more, because typically this is based off of, I wear a sleep tracker, like Scott was saying, and there's two big things that I've learned through that. Well, actually 3, I should say 3. One, sleep consistency. So trying to be as close to the same bedtime and wake up time as possible is one of the best things you can do for a more efficient sleep, better sleep. 2, when I'm training a lot more, my sleep tracker is telling me I need more sleep. So it could be wrong, but I trust it. And then the third thing is, not that everyone necessarily should cut this out, but alcohol tends to wreck your sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that as training intensity and duration goes up, it should be a ratio of sleep increasing 10% or something, some kind of number, and calories too, nutrition, protein, things that you're fueling and rebuilding your body with, and having that, and be cognizant of a bigger demand, because now you're just not trying to keep your body 98.6. You're also putting a lot of miles, and you need fuel for that, and part of that fuel, I would imagine, the building blocks for repair, right? So they put people in a cave, and they said no light at all. So, you don't know what time it is, and you don't know anything. You just sleep when you feel like you need to sleep. And you know how many hours people slept? So they're thinking this might be hardwired into our programming, our DNA. They found 8 hours was the number of people slept in a completely dark environment. I thought that was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not that we follow the sun. They were done that way. So they took some athletes and they had a single night of sleep that it was defined as poor or reduced sleep. It was just less sleep. And they were wondering how it could affect their performance. And what they found was their physical performance was definitely decreased. Their endurance was measurably decreased, that their VO2 max was measurably decreased, and their single rep max for a squat or whatever movement they were doing for single rep was also reduced. And they found the likelihood of injury was increased. And all that makes sense. Your coordination isn't tight. You don't feel the pop. You don't feel as like your gait maybe. You've seen somebody run tired. They run different than when they're not tired. They kind of slunched over. They look like Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. That's their running gait. That guy needs to get some more sleep. And you're more apt to get injured that way. When you don't pick your feet up, you're going to hit a rock and you're going to find the ground sooner. Your gait isn't as clean. So then they did another study, a 2014 study for athletes that spent just 6.5 hours sleeping versus 8 hours. And they found that the people that slept 6.5 hours were 2.5 times more likely to be injured. Now I know for you critical thinkers, you're saying, Don, you left a lot of details out. I did. Really just food for thought. That get your sleep, you're less likely to be injured. And I'm going to say you're just safe just to say that and move on to the next line. So here I go. Do you have something to say, Scott? You lean forward.
Maybe you're going to bring this up, but as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about, and I'm going to throw a percentage out there that I have no scientific or research based on this. 80% of the world takes an afternoon nap, a siesta or whatever. And I think that goes back to, even when we were hunter gatherers, where it was hot in the middle of the day and you typically ate a meal and you took a little bit of a siesta. I wonder, in Western culture, it's actually frowned upon. In many cases in jobs, we aren't able to take an afternoon nap. There are some careers that allow you to do it, but most do not. I'm wondering if that plays into this, that a short nap. And I have to go back to the book. What was the sleep book that we read and we did some podcasts on? It was called Sleep.
There you go.
Remember that, Don?
You bet.
Anyway,
you nailed it.
Anyway,
but that's a great segue, Scott, for my next aha moment in chapter 16. That they found really sleep is like a performance enhancing drug. One that you can that isn't actually tested for, but has a lot of impact on our ability. They took some Stanford athletes, basketball players, and they were encouraged to sleep. One group, they took two groups. One group, they said, just do what you normally do and keep doing it and don't do anything different. Okay, that's a pretty easy group to qualify for. The other group said, hey, your goal is to sleep 10 hours. And we don't care when you get the 10, but you need to get 10 out of 24 hours. If it takes a 2-hour nap during the day, fine, get your 10. And you that are sleeping 10 hours, no alcohol, no caffeine. To Adam's point, decreasing alcohol affects the quality of your sleep. And what they found out is the shooting percentage, free throw line, their ability to sink a basket and catch the net on the inside and not the outside. There was a 9% shooting improvement in shooting by 9% for getting 10 hours of sleep versus doing what you normally do. And their sprint speed, I don't have statistics or a table, but the book says their sprint speed, the ability to run from one side of the court to the other, was improved. So performance enhancing drug, sleep, absolutely. And I'm bringing most of these athletic things to our attention because, after all, it's Trail Runner Nation and it's not, Health Nation, where we might talk about how all the systems of the body are improved with sleep. And you guys brought it up on each one of your topics. That on chapter 9 and 10, sleep was included in your list. So sleep's very important. He warns a bit about baseline resetting. And what does he mean by that? Baseline resetting.
Catching up on your sleep?
No, good
No?
guess though. But it is like, I call back to the frog in the pot with boiling water. That baseline didn't exist. It kept getting hotter and hotter and hotter in that pot until it was boiling, and then he couldn't get out. And maybe he wasn't aware of it until it got too hot for him, whatever that was. Okay. So baseline resetting, you saying, I've been like this for a long time. I've got my 6 hours in. I can operate on 6, and you don't even realize or recognize how you have declined in all of your abilities, your ability to recover from runs, your ability to have cognitive sharpness and be a problem solver, because you're used to living at 70% instead of 100+%. So he talks about cognitive baseline resetting. And then he also mentioned, because I'm thinking, heck, if a little bit's good, then a whole lot's got to be better. And no, that's not the case. He says sleeping too much isn't a benefit. So there is that peak, 8 hours or on either side of that works for each one of us. And my final point, but if you have something to say, I'm ready to talk about it, but I have a final point.
I was just going to jump in real quick, Don. One thing that I think is interesting about what you were just saying about all those improvements with getting better quality sleep in those studies is it just makes me think about what Scott said earlier about the various people that had a reputation for sleeping 3 hours a night or whatever because they had too much to do. When I hear that, my instinct is imagine what they could have gotten done if they were well rested,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like that's the flip side is maybe you get 3 times the work done in half the time if you got the right amount of sleep.
And we talked about, cognitive ability, keeping Alzheimer's or dementia away. And we said you keep the mind active and you keep learning things and you keep pushing in spaces that's new or recalling things that were in the past to keep that mind active, like we want to keep our body active. And if we're short on sleep, we don't have a lot of resources there. All we can really do is handle what's in front of us. There isn't time or energy or focus to try something new because we're just fatigued and there's no bandwidth. There's no energy to apply towards new because we've done a baseline resetting. We feel old, we feel tired, we feel drained. We don't have enthusiasm to reach out and explore because we're just trying to get done what's in front of us. And I think that kind of happens when we're out on those long runs and we stop thinking. When we get to a certain point, the body is using all of its resources to one foot in front of the other, to take in proprioception, to know where our foot is so we don't fall over, et cetera, and all the other things you have to monitor as you're running. And then somebody asks you to do math. And they go, I think we're at mile X and it's 2.5 miles to the aid station. Okay, so then where will we be? And it's like, I don't know. You do the math. I can't do simple math when I'm fatigued. The body restricts some of simple skills because right now we just need to use our brain to focus on staying upright and not fall over and keep one foot in front of the other. We don't have time for math. That isn't critical. What's critical is staying upright. So I think the body pulls away some resources from things like staying cognitively active and curious and learning new things and doing a crossword puzzle because we're just tired. We're just trying to keep going. So,
hey, just a little note. I looked it up. The book was called Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams by Dr. Matthew Walker. And I can't remember how many episodes we devoted to that one, but I'll if I can find them, I'll put the links to those episodes in the show notes.
Cool. My last point, for those of us in the 40s through the 60s, I guess if you make it through 60, this doesn't apply to you. I don't know. But he said the most important time is between your 40s and 60s. Good sleep in middle age is important for avoiding cognitive complications, dementia and Alzheimer's. So, just you're in the 40 to 60 range. Sleep is just as important for us. So
don't you guys don't you love when we don't rehearse this ahead of time and our chapters just complement each other perfectly? It's too good. It's too good.
Well, that's exact reason. Adam, that's the exact reason he's bumping up as the number one thing, sleep. What you're recognizing is sleep taking the lead. Nutrition is there listening behind, and exercise is listening behind, and sleep is catching up and creeping up and about to pass them.
How did Don just automatically assume what you meant, that his was the most important chapter?
It's obvious, Scott.
Hey, one of the things that the book brings out or makes you realize, whether it's written or unwritten, is life is a race, right? And Don has talked to me and drilled this into my head. If you're starting a race and you're 5 miles into a long race, think about, how are you going to feel at the end of the race? Can I be running at this pace at the end of the race? And I think that that's one of the things when you think about your life. This book makes you think about that. Think about the last decade of your life. If you have a parent or a grandparent or great grandparent that are in that final decade, what is their quality of life? What do you want the quality of your life to be? And if you think about that end 10 years, what are you going to do to guarantee or to improve your chances of living that last 10 years healthfully, doing the things that you love versus laying in a bed or twiddling your thumbs? And I think that that's what I got out of this is, I'm not too far away from that final 10 years. I'm not saying I'm going to get hit by a bus or anything, but I think the time to think about that is at Ryan's age or Adam at your age. What are some things and hobbies, habits that I'm going to do today? To your point, Adam, what are the short-term things that I'm going to do that are going to help long-term? And I think that this book is a great book to kind of open your eyes to what are the four horsemen, what are some tactics, what is the strategy that you're going to initiate to make sure that you have a long health span.
Yeah, and to that point, to me, another really big takeaway from this book is something that we have all talked about before, and something I love to talk about to my athletes and friends and other runners, especially as it relates to running a race, is controlling what you can control. And so there's going to be all sorts of things in life, accidents, sometimes diseases, things that happened that were outside of your control. And maybe you could have done some things to help prevent them, but whatever, things are going to happen that you have no control over. But what I love about this is Dr. Attia gives all these things that are within your control that can at least set you in the right direction. Like nothing's guaranteed, but at least if we implement these things in our lives, we're putting ourselves in the best possible position to, at the end of our life, have a really good health span.
Guys, I think those last two comments were spot on. And I think if I added anything, it would be like passing gas in an elevator. I would ruin it. So well done.
You'd stink it up.
Exactly.
Hey, Adam, if people out there listening want to learn more about Adam, go to adamkimble.com. Of course, all these links will be in the show notes. Run on Dirt Coaching. Do you have room in your coaching portfolio if someone's interested in?
I do. I'm happy with the number of athletes I have, but if a friend of Trail Runner Nation wants to work with me, I'm always open to that.
Right on.
Good deal. What's the best way to get a hold of you at that Running on Dirt coaching
actually,
site?
AdamKimble.com has all the links to reach out, so that's perfect. Yep.
Excellent. Well, this was a fun book. Like I said, if you haven't read it, I've recommended it probably to no less than a dozen people, runners, non-runners, people that I work with. I've referenced a lot of the stuff that's in there all the time. Like Adam said, you're in a conversation talking about, who you're going to vote for president. You go, hey, I read this great book about longevity, and if we want to, we should sleep through the election. No, I don't know, but somehow you bring it up, and I think that that's one of the great things about a good book is it keeps bouncing around in your head and making connections, and this is one of those books.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.